Next up, we have Robin Beers, Senior Vice President of Consumer Insights and Experience Design at Wells Fargo. Robin holds a doctorate in organizational psychology and is currently co-authoring a book, Business is Human. So add that to your lists. I've had the pleasure of hearing Robin speak before. She's fantastic. She's awesome. So we're really excited for her talk here on research as a catalyst for organizational transformation. Take it away, Robin.
Thanks for joining me. I'm Robin Beers, and I'm going to be talking to you today about how research can be a catalyst for organizational transformation. First, just a little bit about me. I come to user-centered design through my academic training in organizational psychology, a social science that examines how organizations and people within them function as a system. My primary focus of practice was around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And during my doctoral program, I conducted research in South Africa in the late 1990s. I really wanted to try to understand what elements of their racial equity journey could be helpful in the context of the US. I learned about a key, unique philosophy underlying South African culture and informing the entire process of reconciliation and restructuring after apartheid, and that is the concept of Ubuntu. It is a deeply human-centered and relational worldview that translates as I am because you are, or because we are. Ubuntu stands in stark contrast to the rugged individualism that characterizes US culture. And not only did Ubuntu touch me personally on a very deep level, I realized that its relationships between people are the only ways in which humans can accomplish anything in this world. So, as I read this quote from Nelson Mandela, think and recall an experience of connecting with your own humanness through your relationships with others. In Africa, there is a concept known as Ubuntu, the profound sense that we are only human through the humanities of others. That is, if we're to accomplish anything in this world, it will be in equal measure due to the work and achievement of others. I bring this perspective to my career and as a human-centered design and research leader, and I believe that we researchers have superpowers that we bring into organizations that has the power to transform and to heal them. So business is changing. We know this. We've been talking about a VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world for nearly a decade. But many organizations are still operating by old rules made for a world that we don't live in anymore. And that has caused a lot of harm in the form of economic, racial, health inequalities, and of course the catastrophe of climate change. So we know that we're no longer living in a predictable, stable world. The one that we are living in now is full of flux and uncertainty. If we didn't believe that before, then we've certainly learned that during the 2020-2021 COVID-19 pandemic and many other events around the world. But still, many corporations in a VUCA world have continued to operate with what I call an industrial era hangover, desperately grasping at predictability and control. And many continue to subscribe to Milton Friedman's focused economic theory, putting the interests of shareholders above all other stakeholders. His idea, captured in the paper, The Social Responsibility of Business is to Increase Profits, that was the title, won a 1976 Nobel Prize, an idea that continues to drive motives, decisions, and actions of most of the Fortune 500 companies operating today. So the Business Roundtable is an industry group that includes CEOs of companies like Apple, Amazon, Walmart, and yes, Wells Fargo. And they recently changed in 2019 their statement on the purpose of a corporation. It had always been previously heavily influenced by Friedman's focus on profits for shareholders. But the new statement expressed a fundamental commitment to all of our stakeholders, not just shareholders, but employees, suppliers, customers, and affected communities. So this shift has heralded an era of stakeholder capitalism and the acknowledgement that business is human. Here's a couple of quotes from CEOs on the forefront of this shift. Mark Benioff of Salesforce says, companies can do more than just make money, they can serve others. The business of business is improving the state of the world. A very different sentiment than the business of business is making money for shareholders. And then Larry Fink, of BlackRock says, society is demanding that companies, both public and private, serve a social purpose. To prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. Companies must benefit all their stakeholders, including shareholders, employees, customers, and the communities in which they operate. So, researchers have an important role in making business more human. And in fact, I think that we have unique perspectives, skills, superpowers, if you will, that can help organizations care deeply about people. We know that stories have power, and that leading with people makes organizations more equipped to succeed and make the world a better place. So I'm going to go through these superpowers that I believe catalyze organizations to become more human and effective. And I'm following this model that my team uses quite a bit when we're thinking about the research arc. We're collecting data, and that's around the what. So what are we learning? And we're connecting concepts and comparing assumptions that the business has with what we find out in the field. So sense making, the so what. And then finally, now what? What actions are we going to take? What is really important? And what are we going to do about that? Generating. So when we talk about the what, the learning, gone is the myth that the future is predictable. The only thing that organizations, or any of us really, can control is how quickly we learn. Transformation always starts with learning, and research helps us to learn as fast as possible. And so in this VUCA world, it's hard to say, VUCA world, research is the most predictive practice that we have. So research insights brought from out there make everybody out there in the world, make everybody in here, the business, sales, design, engineering folks, smarter. These insights, the what, are gathered by means of deep empathy and listening, skills that all leaders need to cultivate today. And deep listening and empathizing are skills that robots will never have. So listening is a critical precursor to learning. And I'm talking about really going beyond the transactional view of research. So it's a bit of a complex topic to unpack. But when I say that we want to get beyond the transactional view of research, a transactional view of research would really be, we go out there, we interview people, or we distribute a survey, we collect that data, we bring it in here, and then we make business decisions. Going beyond that is really looking at the assumptions inside of the organization and asking ourselves, okay, with what data we collected out there in the world, do these assumptions that we hold internally still match up? Or do we need to adjust our own strategies and visions for what we're trying to create as a business? So as we move down in the research arc to the so what, we're talking about connecting. We researchers occupy a unique vantage point because we're often in the position to look across the organization system. So we must really condition ourselves not just to pay attention to what's going on with the people that we're collecting data from, our participants, our customers, but also, again, with how that matches up on the inside. And I've seen time and time again that research is a silo busting activity. In most complex organizations, the work that we do is multidisciplinary, multifunctional, and we need to bring our data and our findings to all of those functional areas. And a lot of times we do this through collaborative analysis sessions. So since the customer's experience inevitably traverses organizational silos, being customer-centric then necessitates multifunctional conversations. So a lot of times researchers are the ones who are orchestrating those kinds of conversations. And time again, we've heard over analysis sessions or research findings presentations that these cross-functional groups had not ever really been able to talk to each other about these issues before. And that dialogue is very, very valuable. So here's an example of that kind of collaboration and sense making. And there's all these different disciplines within the same group engaged in sense making and looking at it from, of course, their functional area lens, but combining it with all the different lenses in the room. So as observers and interpreters of cultural systems, we're accustomed and trained to look at systems holistically and to understand the entire ecosystem or context, not just a part that is impacted by a particular service or product. And so this means we need to regard the entire organization as our client, not just the project team or the product team that asked for our services. So our participants are going to share aspects of their experience that go beyond the parameters of the study and that affect how we view the whole. And so the organizational change implications can potentially be massive when companies start to understand how the customer's experience fits into a broader ecosystem. And finally, the third superpower gets into what actions do we take? Now what do we do? And I call this generating. So what does this all add up to? What's in and out of alignment with our intentions? Where are the points of friction? And how can we meet out those points of friction in the system? So as we gather these questions, we have to start grappling with, okay, how do we slice off a piece of the future and pull it towards us in the form of testing, prototyping, and trying, piloting and experimenting. So I know this bullseye diagram is a little fuzzy, and that's intentional. So a lot of times, especially with qualitative or ethnographic research, we see that the most impactful insights carry a weight that I've coined the term experiential significance to describe. So what is experiential significance? That's really, it can be described as a feeling of rightness or importance. And it stands in contrast to quantitative terminology. They have all these cool words, right? Like statistical significance, confidence intervals, validity. That really is about making everyone feel comfortable that these findings are true. Whereas qualitative research has used other language like, you know, interpretation or, anecdotal or storytelling, etc. But the term experiential significance, um, I'm sure it's happened to every qualitative research. You might hear something from somebody just one time, but it has such an impact on how you're looking at the phenomena under study that you say, oh, this is important. We must pay attention to this. And from a business perspective, it can land in a way of, oh, we don't want to hear 100 people say this in a survey. We want to take action on it now. So, I think that paying attention to what are those really big reactions that we get from people, I call those the 9, 10 end of the scale reactions, and when are we not hearing those? Those can give us an incredible amount of insight to ideas that we should continue to develop or ones that are not quite resonating with our end market at this time. So I'm going to stop there. There's a whole other part to this presentation around organizational design and how research can often touch on these issues of organizational design, including, structures and processes. And I'll just show you this one model, people, etc. But really, at the essence, what we're talking about is people, and bringing our customers into the process of designing solutions and services, as well as one another, and looking at research through the lens of organizational change means that we're paying attention to all of the possible trigger points in this STAR model that might be affected by what we learn out there and bring in here to the organization. I hope this was interesting to you, and it was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robin. Really appreciated that talk.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
This idea of superpowers has come up kind of throughout the day over and over again. So I almost feel like next year for FXC, we got to have like capes as a giveaway or something for all the designers and researchers there.
Mad Pow on the back.
Exactly. Well, yes, you can talk to our branding people. You guys will figure it out. I also, this idea of Ubuntu, I think is so interesting, and I couldn't help but kind of compare it to what I know about finance, and I think sometimes individualism is really underscored in finance in so many ways. It's almost like a scorecard in a lot of ways of like, hey, this is you versus me, or that sort of thing. So I think that's just a really nice lens to look at all this through, that it's about more than just the individual.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a concept that I just keep coming back to. And, you know, we're always in organizations, financial or otherwise, talking about collaboration. And, even in a lot of the conversations about return to work, or return to the office, rather, we've all been working. It's around like, how do we leverage the in-person activities to be as collaborative and therefore valuable as possible. So again, I think it's just recognizing in all sorts of ways that no person is an island, and that we do need in our complex environments to bring all different diverse, as the previous speaker Andrew said, diverse perspectives to problem solving.
Absolutely. And I think we actually have a question from the audience that's very much related to that. I'm interested in learning more about your collaborative analysis sessions. Can you dive a little bit deeper there and how those are facilitated?
Yeah. So I always say there's real analysis. That's when, the researcher researchers are together, usually in a room or a virtual room, hashing through, making sense of the data. And then there are collaborative analysis sessions that are a little bit more staged or performative. Doesn't mean they're not valuable, but typically how we've staged these is to prepare materials for the analysis sessions that can either be transcripts or briefs of certain interviews or personas, and you bring together a multi-disciplinary group of people. So whoever is needing to consume this research have representatives from those functions in the room. And then we typically have, a piece where people are, diving into the data either alone or in pairs, trying to make sense of it, and then a structured exercise around, okay, what did you learn? What did you already know? And what was your biggest aha? And if you have any thoughts about like what actions we might take, maybe we would include that too. Sometimes you don't want people going into solutioning too fast, but sometimes you let them do that because that's what they want to do anyway. But it's really a way of immersing people in the data and builds an appreciation for the richness, the depth, the amount of qualitative information that's generated from even just a few interviews. So you're getting that them having empathy for the research process, but also steeped in the data, and then you're also able to play with some hypotheses that you might have around themes. um, you know uh, you also get a chance to test out like what's going to be really controversial. What are the third rails that these research findings might be touching into. I know that that's happened a lot at Wells, where it's like, oh, we're going to have to be really careful when we talk about this because, it gets people fired up. So we usually stage the analysis sessions as an event partway through the research process, and it allows people to get involved, also gives them a heads up of what's to come.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As Andrew said right before you, right? It's like let's get all these people in the room and a diverse group, and I think from there some of the best ideas can bubble to the surface, which is great. I guess again along those lines, you mentioned that transformation starts with learning, and research is the most predictive practice. For those organizations that may not be as evolved research-wise, how can they advocate for research as an investment and not just that box checking type? That actual real research.
Yeah. Yeah, if an organization is new to research, I usually recommend that they not start out with generative research. So, like, not big ethnographies on what's the meaning of our services and products in our customers' lives, but rather on the more tactical side. So starting with usability testing, starting with, post-launch interviews if you didn't do usability testing. And then you can back your stakeholders, up the process so that they're interested in incorporating research earlier and earlier and earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. So important. The more we can do at the beginning, the better. So, Robin, really appreciate it. This has been fantastic, and thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for including me. It was fun.